What kind of husband answers his wife's office affair by taking the other betrayed spouse on the vacation she begged him for? How did I go from laughing about my boring husband with my coworker to getting handed divorce papers in a hotel lobby while my husband and my coworker's wife rolled their suitcases past me toward the gate? Can you really still call him the villain when his revenge is calm, lawful, and everyone is watching? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Ardith Vale, and I know people will say I am the bad one in this story. They will say I ruined a good man and a good marriage. They will say I threw away a family. But they do not see what it is like to live with someone who never really looks at you. They do not sit in my body, in my office chair, in my marriage bed. It is easy for them to judge from outside. I say respect follows results, and I have results. A stable job, a nice home, a child who has everything she needs. If I need a little attention on the side, is that really a crime? I work as an operations coordinator in a tech company. That sounds boring, but people come to me for everything. They need logins, access, budgets, meeting rooms. I fix things. At least at work, people notice when I solve their mess. At home, Dan just says that I'm good with emails and then goes back to his spreadsheets. He is an accountant. He likes numbers more than people. Mark is the project manager I work with most. The first time he joked that I saved the whole release, I laughed it off. He said he should buy me a drink for all the messes I clean up. I told him my husband should be the one buying me drinks, and I rolled my eyes. He laughed and said my husband probably had no idea how lucky he was. I told him my husband did not act like it. That is how it started. Small little things. He sent me a meme about burnout. I sent him one about clueless husbands. He wrote that I was the only competent one in the office. I wrote that he was the only one who saw how much I did. It felt good. It felt easy. It felt like air after being underwater for a long time. At home, Dan started to notice that my phone was always buzzing. He asked why I smiled at my screen so much. I said it was just work chat. He asked why I stayed late again. I said we had a release. He asked why I could not just say no. I said he would not get it, because he only had to care about his numbers, not real-time problems with real people. He did not shout. That was the thing about Dan. People think a bad husband is loud, angry, scary. Dan was calm. Too calm. He looked at the ground and rubbed his forehead. He said he missed eating dinner together. I told him he was being clingy and making me feel guilty for caring about my job. I said he knew who he married, and I was not going to turn into some stay-home wife who only thinks about laundry and meal plans. When we had dinner at my mother's house, I told the story to my sister Kayla. I told her Dan was complaining again about my late nights. Kayla laughed and said he sounded like an old man. She told me I was still young and should enjoy my life. My mother nodded and said that men get comfortable and wives need to feel wanted. She said it was normal to need attention. They did not ask from who. Dan sat at the end of the table, feeding our daughter Mila small bites of chicken. He did not join the conversation. He smiled at Mila, not at me. When my mother asked if everything was okay between us, he said we were fine, just busy. I rolled my eyes and told her after dinner that he refuses to see how hard I work. She told me to be careful about money and maybe keep a little aside, just in case he decided to control the finances. The funny thing is, he never actually tried to control anything back then. He just asked questions, gentle ones. He noticed my new dress and asked if Mark had complimented it, because I had not asked his opinion. I said that Mark actually did notice, unlike some people. He went quiet after that. At the office, everyone liked how Mark and I teased each other. We made meetings less boring. In the open plan space, we sat across from each other and passed notes about our coworkers. He wrote that the new intern stared at me too much. I wrote that my husband never stared at me at all. He said my husband must be blind. I laughed louder than I should have. Linda, my manager, gave us a look and later asked if we were getting too friendly. I told her that she should be happy that we have good morale. One evening, a group of us stayed late to finish a big task. We ordered pizza. Mark told the team I was the star of the show. He said that if I left, the whole company would fall apart. Someone joked that my husband must be jealous of my work husband. I said my husband was too busy with his spreadsheets to even notice. People laughed. It felt like proof that I was right about him. I sent Dan a quick message saying I would be late, again. He wrote back and asked if it really had to be this often. I told him that this is how grown-up careers work and that he should be proud to have a wife people rely on. He did not reply. I showed the chat to Mark and said that Dan did not understand my world. Mark said many men fear strong women. I liked that. I liked how it sounded, like I was some big, powerful thing. When I got home that night, the apartment was quiet. Mila was already asleep. There was a plate of food in the microwave. Dan was in the living room with his laptop open. On the coffee table, I saw our bank app on the screen for a second before he closed it. Next to it, there was a notebook with dates and small notes. He said he was catching up on our bills. I said he could have just waited until the weekend. He asked if I was tired. I said I was fine. He asked if Mark had driven me home. I said no, that I took a ride share, and I asked why he sounded so suspicious. He said he did not mean it like that. He said he just wanted to understand my schedule. I told him he was trying to police me, and that it made me feel like a child. I said I worked too hard to be treated like a teenager sneaking out. He shut his mouth and looked down. I hated that quiet. It felt like judgment without words. I almost wished he would shout so I could shout back and win. Instead, he just said that he loved me and wanted our family to work. I told him that if he wanted things to work, he should start acting like a partner instead of a prison guard. Later, when I walked past the bedroom, I saw him sitting on the edge of the bed with his phone in his hand. The screen was bright. For a moment, I could see a new calendar event he had just entered. It said, downtown 9:20 a.m., personal. He saw me looking, turned the phone face down on the nightstand, and said it was nothing important. 2 weeks after that late night at the office, Mark and his wife Naomi invited us for a barbecue at their place. It sounded normal. 2 couples, same company, same social orbit. I told myself it would prove to everyone that there was nothing wrong, that Dan was just paranoid in his quiet way. Their house was neat and a little too perfect, with white walls and matching cushions. Naomi had laid out snacks on the kitchen island. Mark came up behind me when I arrived and put his hands lightly on my shoulders, saying he was glad I could make it. I did not pull away fast. I saw Naomi watch us from the fridge, her smile not fully reaching her eyes. I decided she was just shy. Dan carried Mila on his hip and thanked them for having us. He was polite, like always. He offered to help with the grill and went straight out to the yard. Naomi followed with a bowl of marinated chicken and gave me a look that I found hard to read. She asked how our week had been. I said work was crazy and that Mark and I had been stuck at the office late a lot. She nodded slowly and said she noticed his car was not home some nights. I laughed and said that big projects need big sacrifices. I did not say what kind of sacrifices. Out in the yard, people from work were already there. Some brought their partners, some came alone. Music played from a speaker near the fence. Mila ran around with 2 older kids while Dan stood at the grill, turning burgers carefully. He always took tasks like that too seriously. I brought him a drink and told him to relax. He said he liked having something to do with his hands. I joked that he could try using them on me once in a while. His face went still for a second, then he looked away. Later, everyone gathered at the long table Mark had set up under some string lights. It looked like something from a commercial. Happy adults, laughing, kids running around. Mark sat across from me, with Naomi to his right and Dan to my left. When a coworker asked how it was being married to someone in tech, Mark said he envied Dan because Dan had me, the real brains behind our whole operation. He said I was the one who made everything run. I smiled and said it was nice to finally be appreciated. Dan shifted in his seat and asked how many late nights this next release would need. I rolled my eyes and said maybe I should just sleep at the office so he could have the bed all to himself. The table laughed. I added that my work husband here at least brings me coffee. Someone shouted that I was trouble. Mark raised his glass to me and called me the hero of the company. Dan said quietly that he did not like that phrase. I said what phrase? And he said work husband. I laughed hard and said he sounded like a jealous accountant who thinks eye contact is cheating. People around us laughed again, even Naomi, though her laugh was thinner. I could feel my words landing. I could feel Dan shrinking a little next to me. It gave me a strange rush, like I was finally setting the record straight. If he wanted to question me in private, he could deal with the answer in public. Naomi tried to change the topic and asked Dan about his job. He explained a little about his company's new system. He did not mention anything about our money, about the app on the screen, about the notebook. When they asked about our marriage, I cut in and said we are fine, just that he is old-fashioned and does not understand that modern marriages have more freedom. I said that if he wants to act like my dad instead of my partner, then I will treat him like a parent I ignore. The table laughed again. Dan pressed his lips together and reached for his water. At one point, Mark walked behind my chair to refill drinks and rested his hand at the small of my back as he leaned over me. Naomi saw that clearly. She stared at his hand, then at my face. I did not move. I told myself it would be weirder if I jumped away like a guilty schoolgirl. She asked later in the kitchen if Mark was always so touchy at work. I said we have a relaxed environment and that she should be happy he has friends. I added that Dan hated that I had male friends at all and called it insecurity. She asked softly if everything was okay between me and Dan. I acted surprised and said she must have heard his side of the story. She said she had not heard anything from him. That bothered me more than it should. I thought, if he is so hurt, why is he not telling people? I almost wanted him to talk, so I could call him dramatic and complain. His silence made me feel like I was hitting a pillow. After the barbecue, most of us went to a rooftop bar near the office. Naomi said she was tired and wanted to go home. Dan hesitated, then said he would go only if I really wanted to. I told him to live a little. I told him I was not going to skip fun just because he did not trust me. He said it was not about trust, that he just missed spending time with me. I told him he should have thought about that years ago. At the rooftop bar, the city lights were all around us. Music was loud, and groups were taking photos by the rail. Someone ordered shots. Mark stood close beside me, our arms touching. When a coworker took a group picture, he put his arm over my shoulder. I leaned into it. Later, in the photo, you could barely see Dan in the back, half cut off, head down, checking his phone. I told everyone the jealous accountant story again, adding details that made him sound more ridiculous. I said he checked my phone every night and counted my drinks. It was not true, but it sounded right in my mouth. Kayla, who had joined us, said I needed adventure and that men who cannot handle strong women should just date quiet little girls. People laughed and clapped. I felt like the star again. At one point, my manager Linda came up to me near the bar and said she hoped the jokes did not cross a line, that HR could be sensitive if spouses start complaining. I said she was overreacting and that she should be happy her team actually liked each other. I told her Dan was just going through a phase and that I was not going to let his mood control my social life. She nodded slowly, but did not look convinced. I checked my phone and saw a missed call from Dan. No message, just the call. Then a second missed call. Then a short text asking what time I thought I would be home because Mila had asked for me. I typed back that I was out with coworkers and that he always knew that was part of my job. I added that he was embarrassing himself again. Then, I locked my screen and turned back to Mark. When I finally came home, the apartment was dark. I kicked off my shoes in the hall and looked into the dining area. On the table, there was a neat stack of papers inside a clear plastic sleeve with a simple label on the front, Household. Dan was at the sink washing a mug. I asked what the folder was. He said it was nothing, just some bills he was organizing. When I reached to pick it up, he moved faster than I expected, slid it away from my hand, and said he would handle it. He added that he was just getting organized now. After the night of the barbecue and the folder on the table, things did not calm down. If anything, they got sharper. Dan became even quieter, like someone turning down the volume. I, on the other hand, turned myself up. At work, Mark and I only got closer. We worked on the same project every day. He would come to my desk and lean on the divider, always with some joke about how he would fall apart without me. I would roll my eyes and tell him he should pay me consulting fees. When he called me his only sane coworker, I said I wished I had met him before I married an accountant. It was a joke. Mostly. One evening, we had a late meeting with an external vendor. At least, that was the official plan. The meeting ended early, but I did not tell Dan that. I told him it ran long, and we might have to go for drinks to smooth things over. He texted back a simple, "Okay, be safe." That annoyed me. I felt like he should either fight more or finally accept that this was my life. His calm, "okay," felt smug. Mark suggested we go somewhere else instead. He said he knew a hotel bar near the office with better drinks and no coworkers. The way he looked at me made it very clear it was not just about drinks. I told myself I was just going because I deserved a night to feel wanted. I told myself nothing had to happen. The office parking garage was almost empty when we walked down together. The lights flickered a little. It felt private, almost secret. Mark stopped near my car and said he could drive us, so I would not have to pay for a rideshare home. I hesitated for half a second, then said it made sense. My heart was beating fast, but I called it excitement, not guilt. In the car, we talked about our partners like they were old furniture. He complained that Naomi was too sensitive and always checking his phone. I said Dan had started looking at our bank app more than usual and asking about small charges. I made it sound pathetic. I said he was trying to control me through money. Mark told me that controlling men only got worse over time. He said people like us needed more freedom. We went to the hotel bar. It was not very full. We sat in a dark corner, close together. No one there knew us. After a while, the bar part slipped into a different kind of plan. I will not describe it. It is enough to say we did not just drink. We crossed a line, and I told myself it was only once, and it would help me feel alive, and that would make me a better wife and mother again. When I ordered the rideshare home later, I felt strangely calm. I told myself Dan would never know. The app sent a receipt to our shared email, but I did not think about that. At home, the hallway was quiet. The apartment felt heavy. I could hear the soft white noise machine from Mila's room. Dan was on the sofa with his laptop when I walked in. The TV was off. Only the screen light was on his face. On the coffee table, his phone was next to a small notepad with numbers on it. I saw the bank app open again, and a line of recent charges. He closed it when he heard the door. He asked how the vendor drinks went. I said they were fine, just boring. He asked if they really needed to go that late. I said that is how business works. He asked which bar you went to, just making conversation. I felt my throat get tight and answered with the name of a different bar near the office. He nodded slowly, like he was saving that information somewhere in his head. He did not accuse me of anything. He just asked if I had eaten. I said I was not hungry. He said he had left food in the fridge anyway. The lack of blame in his voice made me angry. I went to bed with my phone in my hand, scrolling through messages from Mark and screenshots Kayla had sent from the rooftop bar. It was easier than looking at my husband. The next weekend, We took Mila to the playground. It was a small park near our building, with a slide and 2 swings. Dan pushed her gently and made airplane sounds. I sat on the bench with my sunglasses on, checking my phone. Mark had sent a few more messages, little jokes, hints about next time. Dan sat down next to me when Mila ran to the sandbox. He said he wanted to talk about our schedule. I said we were at the park, not a meeting. He said he was just tired of feeling like he never knew when I would be home. I replied that my job was not as simple as his, and some of us had to deal with real people. He said he noticed hotel and rideshare charges that did not match the times I told him. I felt a rush of heat in my face. I told him that accounting at my company always messed up receipts, and that he, of all people, should know how billing errors work. He said he just wanted the truth. I told him he was calling me a liar, and I would not live like that. He was quiet for a bit. Then he said that if something was wrong between us, he wanted to fix it before it hurt Mila. That was when I really lost my patience. I told him it was already hurting me, that I felt invisible, that his sudden concern came years too late. I said if he spent half the time on me, as he did on spreadsheets, I would not need anyone else. He looked like I had slapped him. Of course I did not. I would never do that. But words can land hard. He looked over at Mila, making a little sandcastle. He said he loved me and her, and he just wanted us to be honest. I said, honesty goes both ways, and asked him what his mysterious personal meeting downtown had been. He said it was nothing, just something he needed to check on. Later that day, after we put Mila down for a nap, my mother called. I went into the bedroom to talk. I told her that Dan had started going through our accounts and asking about hotel charges. She said that was a classic move from controlling men and that I should protect myself. She told me to keep my own accounts separate and maybe gather proof of his behavior in case things got ugly. I did not say that his behavior was mostly silence and questions. I let her picture whatever made me look more victim. I told Kayla the same story over voice messages. I said Dan was becoming paranoid and that he had even checked my rideshare history. She gasped and said that was creepy. She told me I had to push back or I would lose all my freedom. She said men only respect walls, not kindness. She told me to live my life, that I was not doing anything wrong by needing fun. That night, while Dan brushed his teeth in the bathroom, I walked past the living room and saw his laptop open on the table. A spreadsheet was on the screen. In one column, there were dates, in another, locations. Some had notes. Late office, client dinner, bar with coworkers. I saw the date of the hotel night, matched with a rideshare charge printed on a bank statement next to the keyboard. My phone buzzed with a new message from Mark as I stood there. I went back to the bedroom before Dan came out, my heart beating fast again. But I still told myself I was not the one doing harm. I told myself he was building a prison of numbers because he did not know how to talk to me like a man. I decided that if he wanted to play detective, I would make sure everyone knew how ridiculous he was being. After I saw the spreadsheet with the dates and rideshare charges, I decided I was not going to sit there and let Dan quietly judge me. If he wanted to act like a detective, I would make sure he looked like one in front of everyone. Controlling, suspicious, old-fashioned. That was the story I would tell. A few days later, my mother suggested a big family dinner at a casual restaurant. She said she wanted the whole group together. Me, Dan, Mila, my sister Kayla, my mother, and even Dan's mother, Ellen. When I told Dan about it, he said it sounded nice. I heard something else in his voice, like he was bracing for a test. I thought, good. Let him feel on edge for once. Before the dinner, there was a day where Dan said he had to go downtown for some things. He wore a nicer shirt than usual for a weekday errand. I asked if it was work-related. He said it was personal stuff. I made a joke about him having a secret life. He smiled a little but did not explain. While he was gone, I checked our shared calendar. The downtown 9:20 a.m. personal event was there, plus a new one set for the next week, same time, same title. A recurring meeting. It felt like a stone in my shoe. That afternoon, I took Mila to get ice cream near the center of town. As we walked back toward the bus stop, I saw Dan across the street, coming out of a glass building. It had no big sign outside, just a small directory board with a list of offices. I could not read them from that far. He was holding a thin folder and talking into his phone with a serious look. I almost called out, but something stopped me. I pulled Mila behind a pillar, and he passed by without seeing us. It was a sharp, strange feeling, watching my own husband move around like a stranger with secrets. At home that night, I asked how his day went. He said it was fine. I asked what he did downtown. He said he ran some errands. I asked what kind of errands. He said it was just boring paperwork and changed the subject to Mila's school forms. I told myself that if he was allowed to build secret spreadsheets about me, I was allowed to ask questions about his new paperwork. I told him he was being shady. He said he was not hiding anything. He just did not feel like explaining every detail of his life. That made me laugh bitterly. I said now he knew how I felt. The family dinner was on a Saturday. The restaurant had long tables and bright lights, the kind of place where kids could be loud. My mother arrived first, already warm from the wine she had at home. She pulled me aside and asked if Dan was still monitoring me. I nodded and made a face. Kayla immediately said she had a new story to post if anything dramatic happened. Ellen came in a little later with Dan, holding Mila's hand. They had been at the park before. Mila ran to me and asked if I would sit next to her at the table. I said of course. Ellen hugged me, a little stiffly. I noticed she looked tired, older than last year. She asked how work was. I told her it was busy, that Mark and I were basically carrying the whole company. Her mouth tightened at his name. We all sat down. Naomi joined us too. She said Mark was stuck at the office finishing a report. That was funny, knowing exactly what Mark was like in late reports. Naomi sat across from me and Dan, next to Ellen. For a while, the talk was light. Mila's drawings, Kayla's new job, my mother complaining about prices. I waited, holding my story like a little knife. After the orders went in, my mother asked how we were as a couple. She said things had seemed tense last time she saw us. Before Dan could answer, I jumped in. I said we were working through some issues, and glanced at him like I was being generous. He looked at me, then at Mila, then stayed quiet. Kayla asked what issues. I said, in my calmest voice, that Dan had started going through my phone and our money like he was auditing me. I said that if I went out for one drink with coworkers, he acted like it was a crime. I saw Ellen's head snap slightly toward Dan. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Naomi watched both of us, her face neutral. I continued. I said that if I came home late from a release, he checked the time, the receipts, even my rideshare. I waved my hands like it was obviously ridiculous. I said I felt like a teenager with a hall pass, not a grown woman with a career. My mother gasped and put her hand on mine. She asked Dan if that was true. Dan said very quietly that he had looked at our shared statements because some charges did not match what he thought he knew. He said he was worried. I cut in and said, see, he admits it, he is checking up on me. I added that he calls me a liar whenever I try to explain how work events run late. He did not say that exact word, but I used it. It worked. My mother shook her head and told him that if he kept trying to control me, he would lose me. Kayla called his behavior emotional abuse from across the table. That phrase felt powerful and sharp. I liked the sting it gave the air. Ellen set down her fork with a clink. Ellen asked me quietly what exactly he had done that was abusive. I said he questioned where I was, every time, and made me feel small and watched. Dan tried to say he just wanted honesty. I said he wanted ownership. I pointed out that he had secret personal meetings downtown and asked if we should all start checking on him too. He looked at me, eyes tired, and then said nothing more. Naomi finally spoke up. She asked carefully if there was any reason Dan might be worried. She said sometimes people act strange when they feel something is off. I felt my chest tighten. I smiled big and said that if she had questions about trust, she should look at her own house, not mine. The table went very quiet. Naomi stared at her plate. Mila asked why everyone was talking so loud. I smiled at her and said grown-ups were just being silly. Ellen pushed her chair back and said she needed a moment of air. Kayla muttered that some people could not handle a strong conversation. My mother poured more wine and told me I was brave for speaking up. After the meal, when everyone started putting on coats, I noticed Naomi slip outside ahead of the rest of us. A minute later, when I went to the restroom, I passed the front window. Through the glass, I saw Naomi and Dan standing near the parking lot. They were not laughing or flirting. They were standing a little apart, faces serious, talking in low voices. Naomi held her phone like she was showing him something on the screen. That night at home, Dan did not bring up the dinner fight. He helped Mila brush her teeth and read her a story. I sat on the bed scrolling through social media and rereading my own messages to Kayla about what a control freak he was. When he finally came into the bedroom, he put his phone on the nightstand. For a moment, the screen faced me. A new recurring event showed on the calendar. Meeting, personal, weekly. At the top of the screen, I caught a glimpse of a recent message notification. I could swear I saw Naomi's name. Then he turned the phone face down and switched off the light. After that dinner at the restaurant, the air in our apartment changed. It felt like the quiet after a dropped plate, when you're waiting to see if it shattered or just cracked. Dan moved through rooms like a careful guest. I could feel him watching me, but not with the same sharpness as before. It was more like he was finished trying to stop something and had decided to just stand back and see how big the damage would be. For a few days, I tried to act normal. I went to work, laughed at Mark's jokes, sent Kayla voice notes about how weird Dan was being. When Kayla asked how he reacted after the dinner, I told her he had basically sulked and refused to talk, which made him sound childish. In reality, he just did normal things: dishes, bedtime, small talk about bills. It was harder to paint that as abuse, but I did my best. One evening, I came home and found Mila drawing at the coffee table while Dan cleared away some papers. There was a faint smell in the air, like printer toner. On the sideboard, a little personal shredder sat under the outlet. I had never seen it before. It hummed once, then stopped, as he slid a strip of paper through. I asked when we got a shredder. He said he picked it up that day, that it was about time we stopped just throwing sensitive mail in the trash. I joked that he must be shredding evidence of his secret life. He smiled without humor and said, if anyone in this home needed that, it was not him. That irritated me. I said he was still obsessed with the idea that I was doing something wrong. He answered that he did not need to be obsessed with anything. Numbers spoke for themselves. I told him people were not spreadsheets. That night, I tried a different tactic. I made his favorite pasta and even opened a bottle of wine. When he came into the kitchen and saw the table set, he looked almost surprised. I said we had been off lately and I wanted to reconnect. He thanked me and said it looked nice. We sat down to eat. I told him I was sorry if I had made him feel embarrassed at the restaurant, but that I also felt he had not listened to how his suspicion made me feel. I said I had been lonely for a long time, that my jokes about the jealous accountant were not from nowhere. I wanted him to say he had been wrong, to take the blame and relieve my guilt even a little. He wiped his mouth and said he could accept that he had not been perfect. He said he had spent too much time working and probably missed signs that I was unhappy. For a moment, I felt hopeful. Then he added that none of that made what I had done acceptable. He said there was a difference between feeling unseen and breaking trust over and over again. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. I asked what he meant, exactly. He looked at me for a long second and said he knew about the hotel. The way he said, "the hotel," made it clear he did not mean some vague suspicion. He meant a date, a place, a receipt. My heart started to pound in my ears. I laughed too loudly and said he was reading too much into a work expense. I said if he wanted to be suspicious, he could find patterns anywhere. He said he had looked at the date, the time, the ride share, the fact that it was the same night as my vendor drinks with Mark. I told him he had no proof of anything but his own jealousy. I acted offended. I said that if I had really done something, I would not be stupid enough to leave a trail. He said I was smarter than that, yes, but not as careful as I thought. He mentioned something about backups, about how deleted messages sometimes still live in the cloud. My stomach dropped. I kept my face neutral and accused him of spying. He shook his head and said he was protecting himself. I snapped that he was making me feel unsafe in my own home. He put his fork down, his voice soft in a way that made me angrier than shouting ever could. He said that for months he had tried to talk to me about us, about how distant I had become, and I had turned every attempt into a joke at his expense. He said he had watched me mock him in front of friends, family, coworkers. He said he had listened to me call him controlling and abusive when he had never raised his voice or his hand. That part annoyed me. I told him abuse was not just about shouting, it was about how someone makes you feel. I said I felt small under his questions. I said he made me feel guilty for being ambitious. I added that other men at least appreciated me and did not try to lock me into some dull routine. His jaw tightened at that just a little. He asked if by other men I meant Mark. I rolled my eyes and said he was obsessed. I repeated that Mark was just a friend, someone who respected my work. Dan said friends do not book hotel rooms with each other and then lie about it. I told him he was twisting things and that I was tired of being interrogated. We went in circles like that for a while. I cried, not all of it real. I have always been good at letting tears come when I need them. I said he was pushing me away with his constant suspicion and that if he kept this up, he would be the one ruining Mila's family. That word hit him. I saw it. He went quiet again. He looked like someone had put a heavy coat on his shoulders. When he spoke, his voice was calm, almost too steady. He said he had been thinking a lot about Mila, about what kind of home she should grow up in. He said he was done trying to convince me of anything. He said the facts existed whether I admitted them or not. I asked if that was some threat. He said no, it was just reality. He said he had taken advice on how to move forward in a way that was fair and safe for all of us. I demanded to know what advice and from who. He answered that it did not matter because I had made my choices already. Now he was making his. I told him if he ever tried to take Mila from me, I would tell everyone he abandoned his family. I told him I would make sure people knew he pushed me into the arms of someone else. I said I could make things very ugly. He did not flinch. He just looked at me with this strange detached pity, like he was watching someone slowly realize the game was over. A few days later, I noticed little changes. A new key on his ring, a cloud sync notification on the computer saying, "File uploaded successfully," with no details. His mugs and my mugs started to live on opposite sides of the kitchen counter. He stayed one extra night a week at his mother's house, saying he was helping her with some tasks and that Mila liked the sleepovers. Mila did like them. She came home talking about baking and bedtime stories and said that Daddy seemed less sad at Grandma's. One evening, after another short argument where I poked at him for coming home late from Ellen's, I exploded. I called him weak, said that if he had any backbone, he would fight for his marriage instead of running away to his mother. I said real men did not hide behind spreadsheets and secret meetings. I told him if he loved me, he would be trying to win me back, not acting so cold. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, breathing hard, he just nodded once. He said, still very calm, that he was done fighting in circles. He said he was going to handle everything properly. I asked what that meant. He said it meant in the right way, through the right channels, not in shouting matches or group chats. He picked up his phone, scrolled for a moment, and then I heard a soft chime. On the screen, a new alarm appeared for a date a few weeks away, right when his vacation days from work started. He typed a label for it and set it to vibrate only. As he put the phone down, I saw the words clearly. Paper drop. The morning of Dan's trip, I decided I would not let him disappear without facing me. He had said it was a reset vacation. He said he needed space to think. I heard that as an insult, as if I was the problem to escape from. I still believed that if he saw me in person, if I cried in front of him in public, he would feel guilty and cancel. I knew where he was staying the night before his flight. I had seen the email on the shared computer weeks earlier, a booking for an airport hotel. So I dressed nice, did my hair, put on makeup that made my eyes look tired but pretty. I told myself I was the wounded wife. I called a rideshare and went to the hotel. The lobby was busy with people and suitcases. I saw him at a small cafe table near the windows. He was not alone. Ellen sat beside him, with a small backpack by her feet. Across from him sat Naomi, my coworker's wife, with a carry-on suitcase and a passport on the table. For a second I thought I was seeing wrong. I walked up fast and asked what this was. I did not shout, but my voice carried. Dan looked at me like he had expected this. He said they were catching a flight. He said he and Naomi were going on vacation. My throat closed. I asked Naomi if she was serious, if she was really running off with my husband. She said calmly that she was not running anywhere, that she and Dan had cleared this trip with their lawyers, and that they were two betrayed spouses taking a break after filing. I laughed and said she was insane, that I was the one who was betrayed now. I pointed at them and told the people nearby that my husband was leaving me for my coworker's wife. I said he was abandoning his family. I saw a man at another table lift his phone and start to record. Dan did not shout back. He told me softly that I should sit down. He said I should read something first. I told him I did not care about his little notes. He signaled to someone behind me. A man in a suit stepped forward and asked for me by my full name. He said he had documents for me. He held out a thick envelope. I stared at it, then at Dan. He said they were just papers to make things clear. Ellen looked down at her hands. Naomi watched my face carefully. I snatched the envelope and asked what this game was. The man said it was a petition and some temporary orders. He said service was now complete. His voice was steady, like this was just another errand. My hand shook as I opened it. The first page had my name and Dan's name, and the word dissolution. There was a section that listed reasons: adultery, emotional cruelty, public humiliation. There were dates, places, screenshots printed small in boxes, hotel nights, ride shares, posts where I had joked about my work husband and called Dan controlling. Another part set a temporary plan for Mila. School weeks with Dan, weekends shared. Rules about taking her out of state. Rules about not talking badly about the other parent in front of her. I read the line about how the orders took effect the moment I was served. My vision blurred. There were pages about money, shared accounts listed one by one, a note that half the savings had been moved into an account managed by Dan under court guidance. My portion was frozen from large withdrawals until things were settled. He had not stolen from me. He had protected himself, and the court already knew. I said this was ridiculous, that he could not just decide this alone. Naomi answered that he had not done it alone, that she had given her own lawyer copies of what Mark and I had done. She said all they did now was follow advice. I looked around and saw people staring. Some tried to pretend they were not listening, but they were. The man with the phone kept recording. I heard Mila's name in my head and suddenly felt very small. Dan stood up and thanked the server for his time. He told me he would meet me in court on the date printed on the last page. He said if I needed anything explained, the contact information was inside. His voice never rose once. Ellen picked up her bag and said she would take Mila later, as agreed. Naomi grabbed her suitcase handle and stood next to Dan. They both had boarding passes in their hands. I stood in the middle of the lobby, clutching the envelope. Dan and Naomi walked toward the security line, their suitcases rolling behind them, while I watched them go with the words "effective immediately" burning on the page in my hand.